Hello, this is Max Grossman with the El Paso Taxpayer Revolt, and we are honored today to have as our special guest District Attorney Bill Hicks, who is with El Paso County. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
So glad to have you here today.
It's my honor. Thank you very much for interviewing me.
So we're going to learn more about Mr. Hicks and what he does, and about his philosophy that he takes to his job, and some of the challenges that he faces, and some of his achievements. Why don't we start out with your background? Tell us where you're from, how you were trained, and how you ended up in El Paso as our district attorney.
Well, sure. How I ended up in El Paso, we'll start back kind of a little bit of family history there. My grandparents were here in El Paso and had kind of settled in El Paso. My grandfather during World War II was a civilian airplane mechanic. He was too old to be in the Army, but he was a civilian airplane mechanic out at Biggs Army Airfield. My aunt and my father, his older sister, were at Austin High School during World War II. My aunt actually graduated from Austin and had gone over to the College of Mines. She was one of the Sun Bowl princesses in her time. My father was at Austin High School, had gone through junior high and high school, and was in Austin High School during World War II. The Army, being the Army, moved my grandfather out to follow the B-29s around to the different training bases around West Texas, to Snyder and Pyote and all of the different Air Force bases. So my father, following the family around, ended up settling in Odessa, which is where I ended up being born many years later. And I grew up in Odessa. Went to high school at Odessa Permian, the Mojo, and then went to undergraduate at Texas A&M, law school at Texas Tech in Lubbock. Had a lot of friends coming from law school back to El Paso. I studied for the bar outside of Austin and Pflugerville. Had my own practice in Pflugerville for a short period of time. Decided I needed to get someplace that was going to give me a steady paycheck, because law school is great about teaching you how to be a lawyer, but not about how to run a law firm. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't know. As a brand new lawyer, I just didn't know the ins and outs of what it meant to run a law firm. So I needed someplace that was going to give me a paycheck, because I wasn't doing that well financially. Started applying around the state. Applied out to El Paso. I had friends out here. It was kind of the family roots were in El Paso. Applied around the state, and I got the job offer in El Paso, and I thought it'd be great to come back where my family roots are. Came back out to El Paso, settled here in February of 1998, and have been here ever since. I ended up marrying a girl who graduated from Coronado High School. She had been down in Houston getting her master's and her first job in Houston. She had moved back from Houston to El Paso, and we were in the same apartment complex, and she was walking her dogs and I was walking my dogs, and dogs do what they do, and so I used that opportunity to ask her out for the weekend, and next thing you know, I've got a mortgage and car payments and a wife, a child, and everything's been great ever since.
You have a child? Is your child an attorney?
My child, we actually adopted, William. He's 6 years old today. Today's his birthday. We held him in our arms. He was just over 24 hours old the first time we held him.
Oh, how wonderful.
So it's a wonderful story. It's a beautiful story. I've told it 100 times, and I still get teary-eyed telling the story of how he came into our lives. He's a beautiful little blessing to us. Wonderful blessing to us.
First grade?
He's in kindergarten.
At Mesita?
Yes. Well, ECDC. Their little school that they have for the lower grades.
Wonderful. And as you're building up your experience working towards this position, what kind of law did you practice? What did your experience look like?
So when I came back to El Paso in 1998, I joined the district attorney's office.
Okay.
So I was in the district attorney's office from February of 98 all the way through October of 2010. In my time in the district attorney's office, I literally moved all over the district attorney's office. I was in intake, which is the kind of the front door of the DA's office where the cases come in. I was in intake. I ran grand juries. I screened cases. I went to the misdemeanor courts. I went out to the JP courts. I ran a docket in misdemeanor courts. I helped train new attorneys in misdemeanor court. I went up to felony courts. I went to the different dockets in felony courts. I went out to the drug task force. Which is the unit that specializes in prosecuting drug cases. That was very educational. It was a great experience. I got to go out with the detectives and sit in the surveillance van and watch them, how they did surveillance and setting up undercover buys and that sort of thing. Fascinating experience, great experience. Came back from the narcotics unit to the main office. I was actually the first senior prosecutor on the special crimes unit, which is we now call it the homicide unit. It's the unit that goes out and investigates the special crimes. So typically homicides, vehicular manslaughter cases, intoxicated manslaughter cases that have some sort of special aspect to them. We worked hand in hand with the homicide detectives. We'd go out to their briefing that they had every Monday morning and talk about the cases, the homicide cases they had, helping advise them on search warrants and legal aspects of their cases as they were developing and researching them, investigating them. Again, fascinating experience. I got to go out to homicide scenes, behind the red tape, and actually go into homicide scenes, obviously, long after they had been processed. But that was, it really helps the prosecutor explain the case to the jury if you've actually been in the home where someone was murdered, and you actually see the bathtub where someone had been cut up, and you actually get to see how big or how small it is. It really helps you to see it, to then be able to ask the questions of the officers and the crime scene guys, because they'll have pictures, but the pictures don't give you the depth perception of how big or how small it is. And so it really helps to go to those crime scenes and see it in person, to help ask the questions, to help the jury get that picture in their mind. But that was a great experience to be in the special crimes unit. After a while, I was cross-designated with the United States Attorney's Office. I was a special assistant United States Attorney, so I was a federal prosecutor at the same time I was a state prosecutor. I prosecuted gun cases, so violent offenders who were using guns for drug transactions or felons in possession. The whole goal of that grant was to get to target anyone who was using a firearm and in the course of doing something bad, and making sure that we got the maximum punishment on that person, whether it was in federal court or state court, wherever it was. I, as that special prosecutor in both courts, federal court and state court, I could figure out where we could maximize our prosecutorial resources and get the best punishment. That was a great time and a great position to be in. Came out of that after a while. After 4 years as a prosecutor in both courts, I went out to Hudspeth and Culberson counties as the lead prosecutor in charge of those two counties. Met some great people in Hudspeth and Culberson counties. Great people out there.
So you have quite a resume. Decades of experience in prosecution.
Yeah.
Varied experience.
12 years total in the DA's office. I've prosecuted everything in Class C's all the way through capital murder. As you know, we have the Walmart shooting now that's pending. Ironically, this will be the second white supremacist that I've prosecuted. The first death penalty case that I had was a white supremacist. We prosecuted and got the death penalty on him. He has since been executed, but he was a white supremacist who had killed 2 people here in our community. And we sought the death penalty on him. Jaime Esparza sought the death penalty, and I went to trial on that case, and we got the death penalty on him. So actually the second white supremacist that I've gone after.
Right, we're going to definitely come to the Walmart case, because I know our viewers are very curious about how that case is coming along. So you've been behind the red tape, Mr. Hicks. You've seen a lot of heart-rending, difficult things that would make people lose sleep. I imagine you've seen children, you've seen everything. right, in these years.
Yeah, the job of the prosecutor is a very tough job. You deal
You
with
need nerves of steel.
you deal with child sex cases, and those are really the hardest ones. Those really just tear you up the most inside. Dealing with children who have been victimized, and I've certainly seen a lot of those cases in my career. So I've prosecuted everything from the whole spectrum.
Why prosecution? Why not criminal defense? What is it about prosecution that attracts you?
Well, I've done criminal defense also. So after I left the DA's office in 2010, I became a district court judge. So I was a district court judge. The district court is the highest level trial court we have in Texas.
Right.
I handled felony criminal cases and civil cases. So I had several multi-million-dollar civil cases go to trial in my court during my 2 years on the bench. Great experience as a civil judge having those million-dollar cases go. And then I also had several felony criminal trials go. I handled, in the 2 years that I was in the bench, we handled 24 jury trials, which is a lot. We were a busy court. We kept the cases moving. After I left the bench in 2012, then I went into private practice. Initially, I was doing mediations and arbitrations, moved on from there to personal injury, family law, and then eventually to criminal defense, personal injury, and family law.
Wow.
So I did do some criminal defense work as well. I didn't do my criminal defense work. I didn't do homicides. I did try to kind of center on the lower level type of offenses.
When you served as a district judge, was that your first elected position?
It was, although I was appointed. I was appointed by Governor Perry to fill a vacancy in the bench.
And which court was that and when?
The 243rd District Court. I served from October of 2010 through December of 2012.
I see. Okay. Take us up to your appointment by Governor Abbott as DA of El Paso County. What were you doing? And at the time that you were appointed, how were you appointed? How did you receive the news? What did that look like?
So leading into 2022, the fall of 2022, I was watching very closely what was happening in the district attorney's office. Of course, at the time I had some criminal defense work, but I'm raising my family here, right? I have my family, my in-laws. I have a lot of family here in El Paso, a lot of cousins. I have a pretty big family here in El Paso. It really concerned me what I was seeing happening in the district attorney's office. The way I look at it, the district attorney's office is kind of the backbone. The criminal justice system in general is the backbone of our society. If the criminal justice system breaks down, then we're not holding criminals accountable. Victims aren't having their cases serviced. You call the police investigate, they arrest, and then nothing.
Right.
So lawlessness is right around the corner. And if you have lawlessness, you have chaos. And with chaos, you have no society.
Right.
So with the criminal justice system breaking down, thousands of cases being dismissed, potentially really bad things happening in what was the most important case, the Walmart case, the most important case in our community. Just a lot of bad things happening going into the fall of 2022.
Can we be a little more specific about that? We're talking about Rosales, the previous DA, who had won her election. Her opponent was James Montoya. She was elected, and then quite a lot of people, including the media, pointed out her missteps. Mm-hmm. And as a taxpayer, I can tell you that I was very alarmed about cases being dismissed, very important cases not getting prosecuted, passing the statute of limitations on very important cases. And of course, tell us a little bit about how attorneys began to disappear from El Paso County.
Well, she initially terminated about 40 attorneys out of the office. And with those terminations, which were all very politically motivated, she terminated anyone who had supported her opponent. And with those terminations, some people were able to get jobs here in El Paso, but it's not that big of a legal community in El Paso, so a lot of people left El Paso.
Is that common knowledge, Mr. Hicks, that the DA fired attorneys who had supported James Montoya in the previous election, or is that just common knowledge?
It's common knowledge in the legal community. I don't
Wow.
know how well it's known outside of the legal
I thought she had
community.
forced them to reapply.
Well, she forced everyone to reapply, but she only hired back in those people who either were neutral or had supported her.
Wow.
So,
Without exception.
without exception, yeah.
That's pretty astonishing. Okay.
Down the road, she ended up hiring back some people who had supported James, just because I think they were just so desperate. But she had hired back some people down the road who had supported James.
Paint for us a picture of the chaos that you found when you entered the position.
Oh my gosh! So
The morale.
I was appointed to take us. Whether you like Governor Abbott or you don't like Governor Abbott, you have to respect this about the governor. Ms. Rosales' resignation was effective at 5 p.m. on December the 14th. My appointment was effective at 5 p.m. on December the 14th. The governor moved very swiftly to appoint someone so that El Paso was never without a district attorney and new leadership. So as soon as possible, the governor made sure that we had new leadership and a new direction without leaving our criminal justice system in a lurch.
When you assumed the position, what were your immediate objectives?
Immediately to assess how bad the situation was, and then to start implementing my 3 top priorities. So December the 15th, I was appointed at 5 p.m. Obviously the office was closed. On the next day, December the 15th, I walked the halls of the office.
This is 2022?
2022.
Yeah.
I walked the halls of the office. And of course, like I told you, I'd been in the office. It was under Mr. Esparza's term. And although, I had some differences of opinion on how the office should be run for Mr. Esparza, but in general, I think that he did a very good job. And when I left the office, it was on good terms. The office was running smoothly. People were, in general, it was a good office. Office morale was, in general, fairly good. So walking the halls on December the 15th, it honestly shocked me how the morale of the office, that all of the doors were closed, that people were honestly scared of what was going to happen. The morale was horrible. People were scared. They weren't coming out of their office. They were hiding, cloistered in their offices. It was unbelievable to me. I was used to an office where all the doors were open. People were talking among themselves. They would come out of their office and talk down the hallway to each other about, hey, you wouldn't believe what the crazy defense attorney did to me in court, and then the judge said this, and oh my God, just that kind of camaraderie that you should see in a large DA's office like the El Paso DA's office. I was shocked when I walked down the halls, and it was just quiet. The maintenance hadn't even been paid attention to. The lights in the hallway, many of the lights weren't working. I mean, you just make a maintenance call the maintenance to come replace the lights, and they hadn't done that. Lights weren't working as you walked down the hallways. A lot of the hallways were dim and dark.
How many attorneys and staff were there when you began your appointment?
I'm not sure how many staff. We did have some vacancies in staff. There were about 63, 64 attorneys when I started.
Which is below the threshold that we need.
We have places for about 92, 93 attorneys, openings. And there were only about 63 attorneys when I started.
So we were down by more than a third.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? It means that the attorneys who are there are overworked, and you can't possibly get through the dockets.
They were overworked. We were still just beginning to come out of COVID. Courts were just beginning to open up. So because the courts weren't moving very quickly, while the attorneys were overworked, they weren't feeling it as much because, again, we were still doing a lot of Zoom hearings. The courts weren't moving as swiftly as they are now. We're back moving. The dockets are moving more quickly now. We're actually going to trial now. Things are moving more quickly. In 2022, we were just beginning that train was just beginning to come out of the station, right? So we hadn't really built up to full speed again. So while they were overworked and stretched very thin, they weren't feeling it as much. It would be impossible with only 63 attorneys to have an effective office now. They were making it happen then, but it was stretched pretty thin.
Wow. And what did the backlog look like in December 2022?
So, to understand the backlog, because some people have confused this issue, there was a backlog of cases in the intake section. So it's about 14,000 cases that had not yet been accepted and put into the courts. So on any average year, the DA's office screens about 30,000 cases. So about 30,000 roughly are presented to the DA's office in an average year. Of those 30,000, we take anywhere from 19 to 21,000, somewhere in that range, and put them in the court system. Okay, that number would be a little lower, about 17,000 to 19,000, if there's not that many cases coming in. So if there's only about 28,000, then you're looking at about 17,000 cases being put into the court system. So it kind of varies depending on the number of cases that are coming in. What you can say is that we refuse to prosecute, decline about 1/3 of the cases that come in, that are presented to us.
For insufficient evidence, technicalities,
prosecutor discretion, right. A wide variety of reasons. It doesn't meet the elements. The police think it does. We don't think it does. So ultimately, the DA's office has the ultimate discretion on what does and does not get filed, and what kind of crime it gets filed as. The police may present a case for burglary of habitation, and we think, no, it's not really a burglary of habitation. It's only a criminal trespass of habitation. Or they may present criminal trespass of habitation, and we think it's really a burglary of habitation. So, we're the ones that decide what the final charge is that gets into court.
Are you personally involved with every case, or do you delegate?
Me personally, no. The DA's office has, we have a division chief over intake, we have a trial team chief below her, and then there are trial attorneys that do the screening. And then there's a whole section of staff that do the data input.
You see, I'm sure, the high-profile cases or cases that have serious questions that need to be resolved. You get those.
I do look at those, yes.
And you manage the whole office, all the attorneys, all the staff, and the budget.
And the budget, yes.
How big is your budget?
$31 million, including the grants.
$31 million, including the grants. How much of that is general fund?
About $23 million, $22 million.
So close to 1/3 of your funding comes from grants?
Yes.
That you apply for?
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting. So, I interrupted you earlier. You were laying out your 3 objectives when you came into office. Can you go through those, please?
So, the very first thing was to assess the condition of the office, and it was bad.
Okay.
So I knew right off the bat we were going to have to do a lot of leadership change, a lot of direction and morale change, and so that was in my mind of things that we're going to have to do just to be able to address my 3 main goals. But we started doing that by bringing in different leadership and bringing in the right people in the top echelon of the office that are going to help me implement the changes. But my top 3 goals were, number 1 from the beginning of my administration was to get the Walmart case back on track. There had been some bad things happening with the Walmart case leading up to my appointment, so we had to get the Walmart case back on track. Number 1 goal. Number 2 was to address the backlog. I found it personally offensive that people could call the police, but the police could do their job. They could investigate, make an arrest, present the case to the DA's office, and then that defendant languishes in jail because no DA is looking at the case, and he ends up getting released out of jail on a personal reconnaissance bond or no bond, and the victim gets no resolution on their case because no one ever looks at it, and then years go by and the case gets dismissed because
this includes violent felons,
everything,
murderers.
Well, I think we had maybe 1 murder case that had kind of fallen off of the radar, but all of our units, even our specialty units, had backed up dockets. Our specialty units do their own screening. So although the specialty units had backed up dockets, their dockets were not. They didn't have the backlog that our just general intake did. Homicide, rape and child abuse, white collar, all of our specialty units, also narcotics unit, all of them have do their own screening. They also had backlogs, just not as bad as the intake section, which has just general felonies,
Right.
misdemeanors.
Right.
But that's personally offensive to me. It's bad for the defendants, it's bad for the victims, it's bad for our community. So addressing that 14,000 case backlog was very high on my priority list. We have to get that addressed. And then number 3 was we need to address the personnel issue. So in setting out to address the personnel issue, I started recruiting people to come back into the office. We have a retired magistrate judge, retired presiding magistrate judge Penny Hamilton came out of retirement to come back. My first assistant was semi-retired, Ballard Shapley. He came back to the office. I have the chief of the litigation section for the city of El Paso, came back from the city of El Paso and came back to the DA's office. Recruited some extremely top, talented people to come back into the upper leadership positions in the office.
Is it true that you had to travel around the state to seek these recruits?
The initial leadership of the office, I didn't have to travel around the state. We're traveling around the state now, recruiting for entry-level attorneys. So we were able to fill the top portion of the office pretty
with seasoned, talented people.
Seasoned, talented, key leadership positions we were able to fill pretty quickly and easily in the first 2-3 months of being in position. The openings we had and still have are in those entry-level, newer level attorney positions. Ones have been in just out of law school and out of law school for the first 2 or 3 years. Those are the positions we have open, and those are the ones that are hardest to fill. For those, I am myself and my recruitment team are traveling all over the state. We're going to law schools all over the state. We've been to 4 law schools now.
Wow.
We have plans to hit the rest of the law schools before May, trying to recruit these lawyers. We have a very robust internship program, a paid internship program that is already showing dividends. We paid interns last year. Out of that program from last year, we have 2 of the previous interns who are coming back and have not just applied, but have actually accepted job offers to come back and be lawyers for us this year. They're graduating law school in May. They're going to come back and be lawyers for us starting in July. They were interns last year. Last year, they came into our office and said, well, I'm really just here because, I'm getting an intern position because I don't have anything better to do for my summer, but I don't really want to be a criminal law lawyer, maybe a probate lawyer. Now they're coming back to be an assistant DA because of the internship program we had last summer.
Wow.
Very happy about that.
Is it unusual for the DA's office of a major Texas city to canvass statewide for these positions?
Statewide, yes. DA's offices routinely go to the law schools that are closest to them. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have a law school
us,
close.
that's far
yeah,
away.
Right? Yeah, Lubbock is the closest. Texas Tech is the closest.
And you're not going to New Mexico. It has to be Texas, right?
We can go to New Mexico. We've talked about starting to go to New Mexico. We don't get a lot of New Mexico law school graduates in El Paso. We get some. Just because we get some, we're going to go ahead and go to those law schools in New Mexico. If there's someone who's interested, we'll go. Mm-hmm. We need those lawyers, and we will reach out and do what we can to entice them to come to El Paso.
Tell us a little bit, Mr. Hicks, about your achievements now. You've already given us some of them, but let's just go in order. What are you proud to have achieved in the 1 year and 4 months that you've been in office?
Well, number one, I am most proud of the fact that the Walmart case is ready for trial.
Excellent.
We announced ready in December. Ever since December, we have been ready for trial. We released some more evidence to the defense in January, but that's really just a copy of what was already released in January. So we're ready for trial. We are ready for trial.
How big is the team? How many people are engaged in that case?
So that's it's not exactly a straightforward answer because we have the team that does it every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then we have a secondary loop or circle that are people that work on it as needed. and that includes people that participate in the strategy meetings that we have. So whenever we have strategy meetings, should we file this motion now, or should we wait and do this later, or that sort of strategy type discussions. Should we do the indictment this way or do it that way? Those type of strategy meetings and discussions involve more than just the team that works on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but also involves several other key people in the office.
I just want to get a sense of the scale of this operation.
So 24 hours a day, we have 3 lawyers, a trial team chief, a principal attorney, and an appellate attorney. So we have 3 lawyers who are working on just Walmart 24 hours a day. Then we have 2 paralegals, a legal secretary, and a investigator, and that's their job is Walmart. Now, I say that includes anything that involves preparing for Walmart. So if it's honing their trial skills, they may go to trial as a second chair on another case because they want, I think I want to experiment with how this aspect of voir dire, if I try to include this aspect of voir dire, how will that play in front of a jury? Well, the only way you know that is to go in front of a jury and try it out. So they may go to trial as a second chair and do voir dire in front of a jury to see if this trying out whatever they want to try out, how that plays in front of a jury.
Right. And I think you told me, Mr. Hicks, that normally you entrust litigation to the various prosecutors in your office, but in this particular case, you're planning to litigate. Is that correct?
Well, then again, that goes back to those strategy sessions. All strategy sessions start with me at the front of the table, or the head of the table, and then we're all kind of spread around the table. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, when we come and discuss it, I'm the one that makes the final decisions. So I make all final calls on strategy. I make the final calls on when, this pleading is ready to be filed. I make the final call. Okay, send it to me. Let me review it. I review it. Okay, it's okay. Send it and file it. I make all final decisions on what is being filed, when it's being filed, and all strategy decisions on Walmart. And I do that because I am in the law, we call it the first chair. I'm the decision maker on Walmart. Mm-hmm. When it goes to trial, I'll be sitting in that first chair position on Walmart. So although I'm not one of the people working on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'm the decision maker on the case.
Now this is a tremendous amount of pressure because this is a case that has national significance. It's been covered by Fox News, CNN. This is not your run-of-the-mill mass murder. It's really being followed by tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. You seem to me to be very even-tempered, very cool, calm, and collected. Does the pressure ever get to you? How do you deal with the pressure of a case like that?
Well, first off, I've done big cases, right? So that part of it doesn't affect me. And you don't... The important thing is, as a prosecutor on a big case, you never take your eye off the ball. I'm focused on doing justice for the community, not on what sticker is on the side of the camera outside the courtroom. Is it a CNN sticker or a KVIA sticker or who? I don't. That doesn't matter.
You focus on winning the case.
Right. I'm concerned about what's happening in the courtroom, not what the sticker is on the camera outside. That doesn't matter.
Right.
What matters is what's happening in the courtroom.
Because, of course, you get second guessed by the public all the time. Is he doing this right? Is he doing that right?
And that's going to happen. It doesn't happen. It's going to happen no matter what I do or what I say.
Right.
Everything that's happening outside the courtroom is going to happen anyway.
Everyone's a quarterback.
Everyone's a Monday morning quarterback. Absolutely. So if you focus on that, that's going to drive you nuts.
Right.
So don't focus on that. Focus on what's happening in the courtroom. That's the only thing I can control.
Right.
Is what I can control, which is the presentation on the case and doing the best job I can with the best people. Oh my gosh, Max, we have got some phenomenally talented people on that team. Mm-hmm. They're great. They're absolutely great.
That's good to hear.
And the strategy people that we're bringing in when we talk strategy, they're everyone in that room, well, not everyone in the room, but we have some people in that room that have phenomenal death penalty experience. They know what they're talking about. They're excellent attorneys, excellent people. It's really, really good, experienced people.
Let me ask you a couple rapid fire questions. So when you entered 14 months ago, there were 63 attorneys. How many are there today?
We have 73 attorneys today. I did receive a resignation letter yesterday, so we'll have a couple people resigning. I have 5 attorneys who have accepted positions, so we lose 2, pick up 5, so a net gain of 3. Mm-hmm.
We're growing, we're filling the ranks.
We're growing and filling the ranks. I have a 6th person who says they're going to accept, but haven't given us the official acceptance yet. So we don't count our chickens till they hatch.
What does a case load look like today compared to 14 months ago?
We are busier. We are busier.
I mean, in terms of number of cases, backlog.
So we eliminated the 14,000. Right? There's about 1,000 cases left in the backlog. So out of that 14,000 that was there, we actually declined more than our usual 30%. We probably declined closer to 40% of the backlog. And the rest of them have gone into the courts. Mm-hmm. So now the number of cases in the courts have mushroomed.
8,000 or 9,000, something like that, right?
So we have a bigger share of the cases in the courts. The court dockets are swollen. So all of our court dockets are swollen, and the courts are trying to push their dockets through faster. We have an increase in the number of people in jail. Our jail population is higher than normal right now. I attributed that to a couple of things. Our crime rate is a little higher right now. It's gone up over 2023. The number of cases that we have filed, and there's a backlog in the court system. They're not addressing the files, the trials, mm-hmm. as quickly as we'd like to get to some of them. So that's increased the number of people in jail. So all of that is putting a stress on our prosecutors in the courts to move the cases as fast as they can.
It sounds like you've achieved a tremendous amount in less than a year and a half. It's extraordinary. It
amazes me that well, and you say a year and a half, but really, so I'm appointed in December. We really get to work in January, and in assessing the problem and hiring new people. February is really the first month that we really kind of have our feet on the ground and our new leadership in place. So really March of 23 is really the first month that we're really moving at full speed.
So I want to get into philosophy a little bit. You're a Republican in a city that is overwhelmingly Democratic. I'm not a Democrat either, okay? How would you describe your approach to the law? How do your political convictions relate to mm-hmm. how you approach the law and how you use your discretion as a VA?
Well, that's pretty easy for me. When I look at the law and the job of the district attorney, it has absolutely nothing to do with being a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
When you approach a case, it is what is justice on this case? What is justice for our community? What does justice mean? I very much have an opinion. My prosecutorial mentality is a very two-handed approach. There are two scales of justice. A prosecutor has two hands, so you have to have a two-handed approach. On one hand, you have to be willing to bring the full weight of the criminal justice system down without hesitation on people that are a danger to society. You can't hesitate. You've got to bring it as hard and as fast and as mean as you can to people who are there to danger and harm people in your community. You can't hesitate. You've got to do it. And then on the other hand, you've got to be willing to and know how to help people who don't belong in our criminal justice system. People who are not criminals by their nature. They're there because they're having mental health issues, they're having a mental health crisis, they're a veteran who is suffering PTSD and who is not a bad person. but it's having an episode that has caused them to do something that they shouldn't normally do. And they don't need to be branded a criminal that is going to prevent them from getting a job, that is going to prevent them from supporting their family. You've got to be able to help that person get out of the criminal justice system and get into a position where they don't have that criminal brand on their head. Now, I'm saying help them. I'm not saying do it for them. You provide the structure, you provide the programs, and if that person is willing to, in the case of a veteran, work hard and work through the program and do what they need to do, then you help that person get out of the system. And you help them get out in a way that they don't have that criminal conviction or criminal brand on their record. They don't have the arrest. They're able to get out and get the record expunged. In the mental health situation, you've got to help them with the structure that allows that person to get back into treatment and prove that they are committed to following their treatment and staying on their medication and staying within that treatment envelope so that they are not a danger to society. And if they're willing to prove that and do that and be a part of that program, then you need to help them get out of the criminal justice system, because the criminal justice system is not our mental health system.
Right, right.
And you need to provide that, and you need to know how to do that. So very much a prosecutorial mentality is a two-handed system. And that's not about being a Republican or a Democrat. That's about doing justice in our community.
Right.
That's about seeing that the system where my son is going to school is safe.
I've always questioned whether elections for DA and even our state appellate court justices should be along party lines. I've always wondered whether that's a good idea. Texas is one of only a few states that does that. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Who's your favorite Supreme Court justice the last 20 years?
It was Justice Scalia. I appreciated that he was it was very straightforward, very I'm a trial attorney. Okay, so as a trial attorney, I'm a very straightforward. I read the law. The law says this kind of person.
The law says what it says.
It says what it says. Right. I'm not a
living, breathing Constitution type.
I'm not a philosophical kind of person.
Right.
Max, God bless you for being a professor. I'm not a professor kind of person. I'm a straightforward, here's what the law says and do what the law says, and that's as straight as far as, I'm not a philosophical, deep thinker when it comes to the law. And I like Scalia because he was very much here's what the law says. Mm-hmm. And that's it. He wasn't a philosophical, here's what the law says, and let's expand upon what the meaning of these words might possibly mean.
Right, with all the intellectual acrobatics that go with trying to make the law mean what you want it to mean.
You know, he didn't do that.
Right.
He's a very straightforward kind of person, very straightforward in his arguments. And when a simple trial attorney like me can understand what he means when he's talking, it spoke to me. I understood his arguments, understood his rationale. It was always very straightforward to me. It was very easy and logical.
Right.
And I always appreciated that.
Okay. So in your current position of DA, you really don't look at your position as a partisan position, right?
No, not at all.
It is a purely professional position. You got a job to do. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think that the prior administration was political in the position and took it in political ways. And I think you see that in how she screened who she hired and who she didn't hire by looking at it through a political lens. And I think that that's bad. That's just bad. And I think evidence of that is I know in my office who is supporting my political opponents. And that's fine. That's 100% that's their right. That's their right. I don't discriminate against them. In fact, several of my leaders on my teams are people that support my opponents, and that's fine. I don't have any qualms about that. That's their right, and they are good. Good for them.
Right. Right.
Other leaders on my team obviously support me, and that's great. I appreciate that. But they don't, whoever they're doing politically, that's their thing. And that's politics.
Right.
That's outside of what we're there to do on a day in and day out basis, which is to seek justice for the people of our community. If people want to know, are you going to be a Republican DA or a Democrat DA? I'm not. I'm going to be the same DA that I've been for the past year. If you like the way we've been running the office, that's the way it's going to continue to be run.
Can I tell you what worries me? And I'm going to go out on a limb here and get a little bit into politics, but this is just me speaking.
Sure.
I'm sure there are other people who observe the same thing, but we got a commissioner's court. You got some members that stray outside of their purview into state and federal issues, and they get very emotional about things like the wall and abortion and women's rights and so on and so forth. And frankly, I am observing that there are members of the court that do things or say things or advocate for things that really go beyond their job description and might even have expectations about what a DA is supposed to do politically. Are we going to support the governor's directives? Are we going to support Texas law, or are we going to push back against it and sue the state of Texas? And what is the DA's role in that? Is the DA going to use his discretion to get on board with our agenda, or is the DA going to use his discretion to support those Republicans in Austin? How does this dynamic function from your standpoint?
Max, I'll tell you, I think that that type of mentality is a very sad mentality to me, because all you really have to do is look back at Mr. Esparza's administration. Mr. Esparza was a Democrat, but when the state Republican-led legislature would pass laws which he might have disagreed with as a Democrat, he still passed them through his office, and they were still looked at on a case-by-case basis within the office. And if somebody broke that law, it was still presented to the office, and it was prosecuted according to whether or not it was an egregious crime that needed to be prosecuted or not. And the Commissioner's Court never tried to lean on Mr. Esparza to prosecute or to not prosecute either way. And I think that's very telling to me in the politics of it all. The Border Prosecution Unit, which is the group of prosecutors, DA's offices from El Paso all the way down to Brownsville, that it's any DA's office that is on the border or touches a county that's on the border, was built by, Jaime was one of the initial prosecutors building the BPU. And the BPU deals with funding for and training for prosecutors and law enforcement agencies that deal with transnational criminal problems. So drugs that cross the border, any kind of transnational problem, gangs that cross the border, drugs across the border, and now human trafficking crossing the border. Many of those issues are the issues that some of the political pundits are having issues with now. But Jaime Esparza was one of the leaders in establishing that organization. That organization is made up of Republicans and Democratic elected district attorneys up and down the border. And it's to all of those prosecutors up and down the border, it's not about a Democrat or Republican issue. It's about, did this person break the law? And if so, fine, they're going to be prosecuted. Now what's the correct punishment?
Let's take a specific instance. I've heard a lot of whispers about a relatively new law about transporting undocumented immigrants or migrants or illegal aliens, or different ways of expressing this, but apparently there's some controversy there, that if you're driving an automobile and you pick up somebody who is not in the country legally, that you can get in trouble because of this new law, and possibly end up being prosecuted for no fault of your own. Is that true?
The smuggling statute. You mean?
Yes, the smuggling statute.
Um,
But the law is too vague or too broad.
So there are different aspects of the smuggling statute. The aspect that we prosecute under is the portion that requires you to know or have reason to know that the person is in the country illegally, that you're hiding or secreting the person or providing transportation for a person who's in the country illegally. So it's not, the Uber driver, for example, is not going to get prosecuted for picking someone up at point A and taking them to point B, and lo and behold, it turns out the person was in the country illegally. That's not going to happen under the statutes that are being, that's being enforced.
Right, I see. What are as we approach the end of our interview, what do you suppose are the major challenges that you're facing right now, just in terms of your job?
Two things. One is staffing these entry-level positions.
Right, you got to get up to 91, 92 attorneys, right?
That is our well, realistically, we're never going to get fully staffed. No office is ever fully staffed because you have attrition. You're always going to have someone leaving. So you're never going to be fully staffed. But if we could get up to about 85, 86 attorneys, I'd be very happy with that. But staffing is always going to be an issue. And it's an issue statewide. I talk to district attorneys from Houston to Dallas to Lubbock, all over the state. No one is fully staffed. Everyone is looking for attorneys. It's a statewide issue, particularly with our younger positions, our newer positions. It's a statewide issue. But that's an issue that we're facing. Number two is going to be funding. The county has made it known to all the department heads we're looking at a 2 to 3% decrease in budget going into this next budget year. That was just made known to us today.
Really? 2 to 3% cut to your
budgets
office.
Across the board.
Not just yours, but the entire county.
Everyone in the county. Everyone in the county is looking at it for a 2 to 3% reduction in our budgets. That at a time that I really need actually to increase the size of my office, because we still would like to have a dedicated family violence unit, dedicated DWI unit, and I'm having trouble filling positions or building out to those positions.
So I'm just trying to understand something here, and feel free not to weigh in. But the county has also made known that they're going to issue $500 million in bonds, including $150 million in COs. They put up on an agenda about 100 bond projects, trails that cost $3, $4, $5, $6 million each, all kinds of stuff that really are not a matter of life and death, but they're going to cut 2 to 3% from the DA's office.
Across the board, every budget.
Wow. Okay. So these are your two major challenges.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they let us know that this morning. We had a quarterly department head meeting this morning, and they told us the budget and finance department was looking for, as we start preparing our budgets for next year, to expect to try to come up with a 2 to 3% office-wide budget cut.
So remind me, your office is about $31 million, including grants, correct? And $22 million of that is general fund?
21, 22 million.
So they want to cut 2 or 3% from the 21 to 22 million.
Correct.
We're not talking about a huge amount of money here. I mean, one trail is worth many, many times that, for example.
Well, I don't get into the policy issues with the commissioners, Max.
That's me.
That's you.
Okay. Very interesting. Is this going to be made public?
I think it just did.
In a commissioner's court meeting, I mean.
I probably not through commissioner's court, because they won't get into that budget side of it until maybe summertime, whenever they start actually looking at the budgets themselves, and when they start being presented in July, maybe August, when those budgets are actually being presented to the commissioner's court.
A couple things I want to touch on at the end here. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with law enforcement, county and city, and your relationship with the commissioner's court. How is that relationship going?
Politically, I have been endorsed by the El Paso Police Officers Association and the El Paso Sheriff's Officers Association.
Wow.
So
Even though you're Republican.
And CLEAT, the combined law enforcement agency. So even though I'm a Republican, I've received the endorsement from all three organizations.
Wow.
I'm very proud of that. Inside the office, I will tell you that I'm very proud of the fact that we have renewed ties with all of our law enforcement agencies that had been lapsed for 2 years under the previous administration. I now hold every 6 weeks, I hold a chiefs meeting where I have the chiefs of all of the local law enforcement agencies, including the school districts, to come to my office. And we sit at a big rectangular table and ask them, do you have issues with the DA's office? Do you have issues with the cases you're presenting? Now, do you have issues in general? Or what issues are you having in your agency that other chiefs or the sheriff's department or DPS may be able to help you with, because DPS and the sheriff's department are there also. And for example, one of the smaller agencies said, well, DA, can you help us with training on, I forget what the issue was, but he started talking about the training issue. And the sheriff's department raised their hand and said, well, we have the regional training academy right here. If you need training, you tell us what you need and we'll make it happen. They exchanged numbers, and now that training issue has been solved. So this roundtable that we're having is leading itself to cross-agency communication, cross-agency solutions, and then also better communication from law enforcement to the district attorney's office. We're getting more agencies interested in DIMS, which is the program for 24-hour presentation of cases to the DA's office. It makes the whole intake system go faster. It gets cases presented into court faster, which leads to faster resolutions of cases. So it's just a faster, more efficient system all the way around. It's this great communication with the agency heads across the city and county. We've also now gathered, separate from that, all of the school district police departments and are trying to come up with a solution, an innovative solution. We've come up with a solution. Now we're trying to find the production company, an innovative solution to address some of the bomb and gun threats that we're seeing in our schools. We're taking the lead on that, and we're working with the county attorney and the FBI to try to come up with we've come up with a good solution. Now we just need to get a production company to get it all put together. Something to get out to our children in our high schools and junior highs of why these bomb threats and gun threats are so dangerous and are being taken seriously by our school districts, the FBI, and why they shouldn't do it, and what the consequences of doing that sort of thing are. So we're in the process of getting that going. So we have some great projects that are going as a result of collaboration with law enforcement agencies that had never been done before. The DA's office had never called these kind of meetings with law enforcement. It's being had thanks to my leadership and what we're doing in our office, because I believe that the way to a safest cities designation is through collaboration and cooperation and communication with our law enforcement partners.
One final question. As a regular reader of our newspapers and a follower of the media, I can't help but notice that, yes, the crime rate is going up. Mm-hmm. We hear statistics being bandied about, but it seems clear it's been an upward trend. Why do you suppose that's happening?
So, you also need to look at where the crime rate is going up. It's going up in the thefts and the auto theft and burglary areas, not so much in the serious crimes, murders, and sexual assault cases. Those are not going up. It's the thefts and burglaries that are going up. I think part of that is coming from where we haven't been as aggressive with our juvenile offenders as we should be.
Okay.
And we haven't been getting the message to our juvenile offenders not to do adult crimes.
So a lot of that is repeat crimes by
younger
individuals.
We have some transitory crime, people that are only in our community for short periods of time that are committing crimes and then are moving through. So we're having some of that happening. So a lot of that is more of a crime of opportunity, more so than passion crimes, people that know each other type of crimes. Crime of opportunities, we have the Motor Vehicle Theft Division has recently busted a theft ring, an auto theft ring. They did a great job, a great investigation there. Hopefully we'll see a downward trend in some of the auto thefts as a result of the theft ring being broken up. So, you know, we're seeing some trends that the police are moving to investigate and stop and address.
And there are other factors like increase in poverty, and there are other factors at play here. It's not necessarily
societal factors are always a play in increasing crime. We've seen an increase in DWIs and intoxicated cases. The police department has moved to address that by putting more of their traffic offense or traffic enforcement officers and into nighttime enforcement instead of their usual daytime enforcement positions, in hoping to enforce more DWI laws. As you know, our office is now promoting a free ride program through a grant that we got with the TxDOT. The only complaint I've gotten is that we don't have enough vouchers. People want more vouchers, more free rides. Unfortunately, we have to ration it out over the course of a full fiscal year, so we aren't able to put as many vouchers out every weekend as we would like. But there are, you know, we've have over 2,000 cases now that people that have used those vouchers, and we feel that that's 2,000 less drunk people that have been on the road, and so that's a good thing. Moving to address some of the DWIs and some of the increase that we've seen in DWIs and intoxicated manslaughter cases. The police are moving to increase their enforcement. We've increased our opportunities for people to get home safely without driving intoxicated. They're seeing those types of change in adapting law enforcement to the change in circumstances. We've seen the increase in the violent crime task force that the police put together, Chief Pacias put together, involving the military police from Fort Bliss to try to address the soldiers who are getting in trouble. And so now when they see soldiers at certain designated bars that are considered hotspots, the police are partnering with military police so that the military police take control of the soldier then and there on the spot, and are diverting the soldier into military police custody of the spot.
MPs have the ability to do that outside the base.
Yes, if it's a soldier, they can take them into custody on the spot. They cannot. Military police cannot intervene into civilians, but that's why the police are paired with the military police in these crime task force, violent crime.
So we got MPs in bars in the Cincinnati district looking around.
Not in bars. They're partnered up outside. So if the officer sees someone, they interact with someone who's in the military, they can call over the military police to come over and take charge of the soldier.
How do they determine if someone's active duty?
I'm assuming that comes in the question of the officer's question.
Interesting. Okay. Well, look, this has been a great interview. It was so interesting, and I'm sure it's interesting to our viewers to learn all about your career, your challenges, your many successes. And I just want to thank you for spending more than an hour talking to my group. Thank you so much, Mr. Hicks.
I appreciate the time, Max. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.